done with smartboards and iPads at staff meetings to share with other teachers, so that teachers are teaching teachers and learning from each other. Student support services, to provide targeted support services and interventions in the inclusion classroom, to ensure differentiated instruction to meet the needs of all learners, to monitor progress and analyze data, to develop student success plans for students that scored in the needs improvement and warning categories of MCAS, and to provide reading support interventions in flexible groupings, and to provide and continue to provide math support with Title I. And lastly, for school culture, to continue to offer anti-bullying programs and to ensure social-emotional programs are in place. We're using Open Circle at the lower grades. Through the PAWS committee, we're looking at a new curriculum for the upper grades, grades 3 through 5, which is more in line with the grade level and age appropriate for grades 3 through 5. That curriculum will be expanded to include lessons on social media and the appropriate use of technology. And one other piece that our school is going to be implementing is a program on teaching manners to students. To increase student and staff participation in community outreach, to increase parental involvement in school activities, to offer team building opportunities, to implement nutrition and fitness initiatives for staff and students. We just completed the biggest loser at our school. It was quite a success. I believe somewhere around 300 pounds were lost by members of the faculty, so it was fabulous. And
awesome.
Monitor and improve school safety is always a huge priority for us. And that is it. Any questions?
Questions or comments? I have a couple of questions. Maybe not. Mike, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
The as I read through these plans, how do you evaluate whether you met those goals or not? And, you know, it was very brief up here, but it's a lot more detail in
Yes.
there. Do you actually go back and review that and see where you are at and whether it's a successful program or not a successful program? And I don't think and maybe this isn't the place to share that, but I'm not sure we're privy to that information.
I think in the school improvement plan, you'll see the outcomes for the past school year.
Yeah.
Which tries to dictate the progress as the goals are written. I think in some of the administrative work we'll be doing over the summer, it's really going to simplify some of the goal writing to make it, and this is actually one of my concerns when we do that, measurable, short,
Right.
specific, number, answer, this, a survey, whatever it would be to give us that product.
Sure.
For something small, so you have to get really focused when you look at that,
Right.
and then it doesn't always reflect all the other work that goes around it.
Yeah.
But that's going to be something that we're going to be growing together. We actually start the PD on that the week after school gets out, to help us be more consistent in that.
But just to add on to that, I think you want to reach a happy medium, though, because I think a lot of the content in here is good. But like Michael, it's sometimes hard to measure exactly, you know, how well you hit the goals. So, you know, don't get it down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we hit a 3 on this one. But a little more concrete measurement would be helpful for us.
So just to add to that, so we recently embarked on our own evaluation process, because very few school committees evaluate themselves because they have to do it in public, which is fun.
And I might add, we had very, very high grades.
Yes, we did.
But we had to think about so we decided to assign, you know, a 1, 2, 3, or 4 to like underdeveloped, developing, developed, and sustainable.
Yeah, whatever it was, yeah.
Whatever the fourth one was. And we found that was a nice way of doing it when you're doing it in a group of people who are from diverse settings, and the school councils, of course, are very diverse, you know, in terms of the representation. And so that strategy might help you as just sort of an example, certainly not a requirement.
Right.
But we found it to be very helpful, and we're going to continue doing it to sort of see where we get to our goals, which may or may not be, you know, super specific. Some of them are very odd. Which brings me to my next point. Do I still have the floor?
Yes, you do, ma'am.
Awesome. So one of the things that we have talked about in our goal setting, we're going to be doing our own goal setting this summer, is around our role in looking at these improvement plans and also tying our work as a school committee more closely with student achievement. I think we can all sort of say that's a big question mark in our minds because we were told throughout from our professional group, the MASC, that we have a role some way in influencing student achievement apart from
Goes beyond policy making.
Right.
policy making and all that stuff. But, you know, we all, I think admittedly, don't understand what the student councils do as well as we could and would like to have more of an opportunity or, you know, sort of put that invite out that we would like to be able to react better to these plans and to provide feedback and also to help us do our work going forward of the year so we can continue to support your goals as opposed to just, this is nice and I'm really glad that you're doing it. I think we want to feel like we're aligned with you more closely over the year. Does anybody else have any
No, and
perspective?
I think, I remember, this was back 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't know why this happened, but I ended up attending each school council meeting at each of the schools. In fact, I might have gone to more than one at each school, and it was really helpful to get an idea, one, of the membership, two, the kind of things you discuss, and you know, I wasn't there in any official capacity other than just to observe. And one of the things I think might be great next year is, you know, occasionally have school committee members just attend to be part of and that would give us a better feeling. I also think, though, that you know, some of the changes that it sounds like you're looking at making in these plans will help us to figure out how better aligned we are with the goals at the schools. It's hard for us to measure. I mean, you can say we have an impact on student achievement because we work with the superintendent and the business manager or the director of finance to fight for a budget, which obviously we get the budget you need. We're able to get no Adam into the 4th grade. We're able to do other things. But sometimes you wonder if we could have a more direct impact on student achievement. And I think if by attending some of those meetings, it will at least give us a better feel for what's going on. I'd like to see that happen next year. So, if you're open to that.
Oh, they're open to the public. Similar to your meeting.
They're posted meetings.
I know.
48
I know.
hours.
I'd like to add to that, I think that's a very, very appropriate answer. They're open to the public. And I think that if we're truly interested, we should participate as public. I really would hate to be in micromanagement kind of thing or getting in your hair on it because to me, you're doing a very, very good job. What I see in the plans is comprehensive, intensive. You're setting out goals. You're working toward them. Each school, as we've said before, is kind of different, and at the same time, you are in fact hitting those common core items. And I applaud you. I think you're doing a great job with it. And I, again, wouldn't want to mess it up.
But I mean, what happened was, Karen's right, when we started to do the self-evaluation, and student achievement was one of the areas that we had to look at as one of our goals, we realized in trying to evaluate ourselves, we didn't have much to hang our hat on. So so we had to make stuff up, you know. And we still got a high mark.
Right.
But it was clear to us that it's difficult for us to tie ourselves into student achievement beyond policy-making decisions, budgetary decisions, and maybe, I think one of the things we looked at, Mel, was we had urged and there was a consensus on the committee several years ago to try to improve the high school SAT scores by implementing a SAT study program.
Exactly.
So those are the types of things, but we really couldn't put our hands around that student achievement goal.
Well, I do think that one of the things that we've asked the superintendent, we started to work, is for us to get more of the data. And if we can see the data and get a better handle on what's going on at the schools, then maybe we can have or make better suggestions as to what, you know, how things might change to the superintendent. So, but I agree with Mr. Bowers. I think you guys are doing a great job. I want to praise you big time for your efforts in our communications and PR with the community at large. The articles you're writing. I mean, one of the things when Kathy came on was we sat down and we said, we need to do a better job of communications and PR. Not that I want you to stop doing it, but I think we've far exceeded my expectations for keeping the public informed as to what's going on in this district, and for that, I praise and thank you for that
A
effort.
whole subcommittee.
Yes, we don't even have the subcommittee anymore.
Because we're doing it well in the
Right.
district, and so,
I think they need to be praised also for the robust music and arts programs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Awesome.
it's really awesome to see kids walking through streets with instruments, and lots of them. I think that's great.
I was walking by and the middle school chorus was practicing the other day. They were unbelievable.
They are amazing.
How good they were. And that is great. I do have one question that relates to MCAS performance, correlation of MCAS performance to how kids perform on day-to-day schoolwork. I mean, how do we do that? Because you can pick through the MCAS reports from each of your schools, and there's one grade or two grades on a certain subject where you look at the needs improvement level and you say, how did that happen when you look at all the other grades? So do we, and maybe this is for the superintendent also, do we take those results and do we correlate to how what if we have a student that is averaging an A in this subject, but their, needs improvement or warning in the MCAS? How do we correlate that?
Well, first I'd like to say that MCAS is a snapshot in time. It's one assessment, and we never, ever use one assessment to measure whether or not a student is performing. But we do take a look at multiple measures. So we look at MCAS in light of everything else that we do, the day-to-day formative or informal assessments, as well as end of chapter, end of unit, end of term, more summative kinds of assessments. And what we do is we take all of the data and we see what matches up. Because let's face it, if you have one day to take a reading test or a piece of the MCAS and you're not feeling well, you're going to score poorly on that snapshot. That's one piece in time. But if we take a look at all of the other multiple measures that we use to assess student performance and see if that matches up, we start asking ourselves questions. Why did this test look significantly different from other data that we collect? Or, gee, look at how well this student did and is always performing high in the classroom. It's a perfect correlation. So again, I caution the overemphasis on any one assessment, MCAS included, when we're taking a look at student performance. Unfortunately, though, MCAS is the measure that we're used to be judged by the general public. So we do pay attention to it, but if we're teaching the curriculum frameworks and aligning them to the Common Core that have been released through the national standards, then MCAS will follow because they are criterion reference tests, which means that the MCAS is aligned to the curriculum frameworks. So if we're doing a good job on the frameworks, our students will do well on the MCAS.
Well, that's what I was going to get at in terms of if a student does not perform well on the MCAS, but then you look back and you say, well, wait, geez, look at how well they perform all year. Maybe that student isn't one that needs extra help or remediation. There may have been an issue that day. But what I wanted to know was if you look at the entire spectrum and say, yeah, this student does need help here.
Yes.
This one needs a little help. This one actually doesn't need help, and something must have. So that's the way you. Okay.
Each principal takes their entire faculty
teacher.
through
Yeah, every teacher, yeah.
Okay.
They know
data
the kids better.
analysis.
Okay.
So not only does the grade level that was assessed take a look at the data, but the grades that precede, because MCAS is a cumulative
Right.
test. And so they're very, very attentive to the detail around all of the data that we do have access to through MCAS, and in particular the student growth percentile that doesn't just take a look at that test for that year. It starts to take a look at that student within the cohort of students similar to that student over 2 years. And so that really gives you a much better picture of how a student is performing as opposed to a straight MCAS test report.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I just wanted to voice my opinion, which is not a reflection of the teaching, but really of the curriculum, honestly. I was, unfortunately, I hate to say this in this kind of forum, but I was in shock and horror that my kid had to remember which Indian built which house versus which Indian grew which crop, while the kids in other countries are learning the sciences and the maths a lot deeper. And it really comes to the core curriculum. It really comes to the core curriculum. We don't teach any programming